Welcome back to The Drum Show, everybody. We are the magazine show that aims to prove that marketing can change the world and that the world is changing marketing. And that's almost never been more true than around this topic, which we're going to be discussing today. Over the past week on The Drum, we have been doing a gaming deep dive, and it's been fascinating to see how many of our audience actually genuinely want to get involved in the gaming space. But at the same time, it's totally unsurprising. Gaming is the most lucrative entertainment medium, and it has truly come of age as a marketing medium. The inmates are running the asylum in lots of cases. A lot of the CEOs of gaming companies and marketing companies have grown up with games. And so it's totally unsurprising to us, at least, I think, that it has become such a hot spot for advertisers looking to reach an incredibly lucrative audience. So on this week's show, we're going to be talking about those branded opportunities for advertisers to get in front of an insanely broad audience. And we're going to be examining some key instances of when it's been done really effectively. But I'd like to introduce my panel for the week. So we have MJ Widomska, who is creative director of Yours Truly. And we have Charlotte Cook, who is MD of Calm Consultancy. Thank you so much for joining us. So to begin with, I think that the reason why we had such a great response to the gaming deep dive was because in a lot of cases, marketers were only just learning that the demographics for gaming are just so broad now. You only have to look at what is technically available through, the work of Epic Games with Unreal Engine to realize that you don't have to pigeonhole gamers anymore. You can really do things that appeal to a huge entertainment-focused audience. But Charlotte, are we now at parity in terms of demographics, in terms of gender, age? Who are we talking about when we talk about gamers?
No, we're not at parity, I
Right.
think. It's still, I think, evolving, but I think you have sort of the Gen Z group, which there is probably a more even split than if you look at, older demographics of gamers. I think what's really cool for me in the 10 plus years I've been working in gaming is now when we talk about, I think, the 3.2 billion gamers globally, we include people who spend as much time a week on Candy Crush as do on CSGO, and I think you have to treat that person as a gamer as much as the other. But I think when it comes to sort of brands, advertisers, you do need to still segment them slightly because different experiences exist on different platforms, different territories, different, what a game on a mobile is very different from a game on a console. But I think what's really interesting is when you look at things like Roblox and, there's quite a heavy female split there, which is really encouraging, and how those people are going to age up into gaming, and we should be looking at those and how we can be targeting those in the next sort of 5 years with the games they'll be playing when they sort of evolve from the Roblox platform.
Absolutely, and I know in a second we're going to talk about Snapchat's foray into the gaming space and how they believe that so much of their audience is primed to be gamers, even if they don't necessarily think they are. Mm-hmm. But MJ, ahead of the panel, we were talking about one key difference, which is kind of the regional difference in terms of which games people play. So what would you say is kind of the best example of that, and what do marketers need to be aware of?
I think that in general, the gaming audience is way more broad and way kind of more mainstream than people realize. I think that, I grew up as a part of a generation that sees gaming, or if you say you're into like games or you play video games, it's as obvious as saying you're into music or movies, you know what I mean? Like, it isn't special anymore, or isn't like a special interest anymore to be into gaming. But I think that when we're thinking about how kind of diverse and broad and like how different the gaming audiences are, one thing that kind of always sticks up to me is like the regional difference, which is even across Europe, you're gonna have, certain regions that are gonna be more into certain games. This is something I think about a lot, but like Central and Eastern Europe, which is very close to my heart, this is where like RPG games and like strategy games are, go really well. And there are games that are extremely popular in like Poland or Germany that a lot of people in the UK wouldn't even hear about. I think that I also stay up at night thinking about the Minecraft and Fortnite divide, which is basically there's this map of Europe and everything east of, which kind of shows you where Fortnite is more popular, where Minecraft is more popular, right? And everything east of Germany is Minecraft, and everything west of Germany is Fortnite. And it's so interesting that even for those like two very popular games, there is still like a regional preference in terms of like what people are going to be, going for. So I think that there is a lot there. And kind of one thing on like the gender, kind of, how marginalized genders are represented in gaming, I think we're very close to parity. I think the latest stat I saw was like 48 to like 52%, obviously including kind of, which it bundled up marginalized genders and women kind of in one bit. But I think we're really, really close to kind of seeing gaming as a very, very mainstream thing.
Yeah, certainly. I remember only a couple of years ago, I went to India, and you're right about the regional differences because PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds was the most visible entertainment medium I saw all across India. People wearing T-shirts, people playing at internet cafes, and yet outside of that, I've almost never seen anybody wear any branded merch related to it. But we're talking there about kind of that gender parity. And to what extent then do we need to think about that difference between console and mobile gaming in terms of a gender split? Is there a difference in terms of who is playing on what console?
I think so. I mean, I think the mobile figures kind of skew the gender parity at the minute slightly because I think mobile does have a larger female audience than console. I think also what you don't want to do is sort of never target a console platform because no women exist there, because they do. It's just not in the numbers and they're growing. So I think you need to be respectful to both platforms. And I think also not doing something that's too obvious. You see examples of people targeting things just because that must be something women like. And I think there's ways you can be clever and sort of broaden the breadth of a campaign outside of just the game, using different mediums that would speak to audiences in a more subtle way. Like MJ was saying, I think that lots of women who have been gamers for a long time are very apparent that suddenly they're being sort of targeted because, oh, you're here, but they've been there the whole time. And I think you don't want to annoy them or alienate them by sort of serving them pink things or things that would speak to women too obviously.
Yeah.
I think that this is also like an accessibility issue to me because, growing up and playing games and like watching a lot of people and how they interact with games and kind of reading a lot about the gaming demographics, the interesting thing for me is that the kind of the mobile console PC split is very much an accessibility thing because there is nothing easier than playing a game on your phone. But the thing is, this is kind of step one. If you had also, a lot of people have mobile phones now that are capable of running games. Not a lot of people have consoles that are capable of running games. And I think that we're seeing something interesting that I don't see a lot of people talk about, which is more games releasing on Macs, for example, more kind of ambitious games having crossovers between like mobile, PC, console. And I think if you're open to playing games, you're going to play them on the platform you have available to you, which is why we have more mobile gamers. If consoles were, something that every household had, we would have a lot, the parity and the diversity between, people for people playing on consoles would be on par of like the diversity and the gender kind of parity of mobile platforms, right? So to me, it is an accessibility thing, and I think the Mac thing is very interesting because a lot of people who don't see themselves as gamers, have let's say like an Apple device as their primary laptop. And it's a cool thing to see now that even Apple now in their showcases, it partners up with like Larian, right? Baldur's Gate 3, that's kind of optimized to run really well on like iPads even, So I think that this is an accessibility thing, and we're gonna see, things are gonna get better because games are gonna be more and more accessible.
Well, absolutely, and that follows that trend of more people identifying as gamers, I suppose. But you both work heavily with brands and sort of advising them in what is possible in the gaming space, actually reaching those gaming audiences. What would you say are some of the most exciting opportunities? Is it to buy, ad hoardings within games, as we've seen with likes of FIFA, Rocket League? Is it product placement? Is it sponsorships? Is it even creating their own branded games? So what would you say are some of the most interesting and exciting opportunities?
I think the branded experiences, especially with the Roblox platform, are really cool. They're not always that popular. I mean, you look at the numbers. Some, I think Vans, I think they had an update last week, and that still seems to be doing quite well. But you have others that kind of won't name any, come in and disappear like the week after. And I think that must be quite cool for the people sitting in the brands to think that they can create these experiences, which I think really actually provide more of a content house, because you can go in and you can record content which you can then use on other social platforms where gamers exist. So I don't think necessarily they need to be treating them as a live ops game, that you would have had developers working on for several years. So I think that's been a big shift. Probably in the past 6 months, we've seen a lot more of those coming through. But I think the sort of multimedia approach is probably the most exciting, because you can layer things now and you can reach gamers. They're not constantly attached to their console.
Although I did bring mine in from home, so maybe I am a little bit.
You might be the exception to the rule. But people, I think there was a report recently about sort of the crossover of TikTok and gamers and how they use that. And I think you can have these sort of do stuff in game and then also maybe target them, out of game and sort of have like multi-layered campaigns, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, certainly. And MJ, talking about that, we've seen communities built around games, but not necessarily within the games themselves. So across streaming platforms like Twitch, and then even some of the kind of the big gaming events that sort of dominate the events calendar, so some of the big conferences. So to what extent then is there an opportunity for brands to reach gamers, even if they're not necessarily within the games themselves?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of brands, especially in like food and fashion, really kind of going for the gaming audiences because, people are not one-dimensional. Just because you're into games or you play games or you're part of like a streamers community, it doesn't mean that you don't eat or wear clothes or like you're not interested in fashion. So I think that brands are kind of finally recognizing that gaming isn't this like secluded audience on like the peripherals of like how you want to do your marketing, but that people who play games are just regular people you encounter. My 56-year-old mom plays a lot of Pokemon Go still in 2022. So it's it's a thing that you can really kind of go for those audiences, and you can still be the first brand within kind of your category, I guess, to like really go for gamers. And I think that we see like Chipotle do this a lot, Pringles. We've seen collaborations with like luxury fashion, and we've also seen collaborations with maybe less luxury fashion. So there is so much that kind of brands can do, and it's all about the interactivity. It's all about creating a memorable experience for people that they're going to remember. And I just wanted to say that, this is, while there is so many new opportunities for brands to get on, there's like skins and games, your own like levels. If this is like, like so many like in-game like billboards, like there's so much they can do. But in a lot of ways, I don't know if a lot of people remember this, I hope they do, but like in the early 2000s, we've already had this. Like when I was like 7 or 8, I was playing games on like Barbie.com or whatever.
Yeah.
They were like, like little games, like little mini games, but this was a way to like connect me to like that brand through like an interactive thing that I vividly remember still, even though a lot of the memories I've had from like when I was 8 are gone now. So I think that like this isn't, kind of having those interactive experiences isn't necessarily something that's very kind of new, but we just have more options for interactivity, and we finally have the recognition that like gaming is far more kind of, far more mainstream than people have ever thought.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I do want to pick up on something you just said there, because one of the best performing pieces we had last week was a contributor piece from James Watley, who said, actually, the metaverse is just a buzzword. We've been doing this for decades, and it's just called gaming.
Yeah.
So to what extent then do we think that is, MJ, if we start with you, is just kind of a way to focus marketers' attention on gaming just by filtering it through this buzzword of metaverse? Or to what extent is it a genuine evolution of the medium?
I think that one of my like recent hobbies is asking people what they think metaverse means, because you're gonna get like a different answer every time. But to me, metaverse essentially is just a new buzzwordy word for online games. This is what it was. Anytime anyone mentions a metaverse thing, it sometimes is Fortnite, sometimes it's VR chat, sometimes it's something completely else. The one thing that they always have in common, this is just an online gaming experience. And like, to me, it's really interesting how like the topic of like MMORPGs, for example, never comes up when we're talking about the metaverse. But like this is kind of when you talk, when you hear someone like describing what they like the metaverse of the future to look like. I was playing those games like 15 years ago. You know what I mean?
Describing RuneScape.
Yeah. You're describing RuneScape, exactly. So I think that I don't necessarily hate the fact that this word exists, because I think that if it helps people maybe understand and visualize gaming a little bit better, and if it brings gaming in front of like new audiences, cool. But I also think that we are essentially inventing new words for the things that have been going on for decades.
And Charlotte, to what extent then is exactly what MJ said, is it a filter through which we sort of can examine those opportunities?
Yeah, I think like MJ said, I think if you've been existing in the gaming world, it's not really anything that new, and you kind of, everybody getting excited about it and talking about it, and you think, oh, that's been going on for a while. But I think the future and the pathway, I think it's a good thing it's put gaming even more in the spotlight, which could have positive and negative, potential. But I think sort of when you look at some of the tech advancements that are happening and will come with it, I think like interoperability is really cool. I'm excited to see that executed like, not that it would ever be perfectly, but I think if there could be that, you know, and sort of ownership of assets is quite an interesting thing, you know, obviously using sort of Web3 blockchain platforms. So yeah, I think there's lots of ways it can advance, and naturally the games industry is always kind of generally a couple of steps ahead in terms of technology and stuff that people are working on that people wouldn't even know about.
Yeah.
But I think to have people engaging and wanting to be in it, and also on the flip side, publishers and developers being maybe a little bit more open to it because there is that buzzword now. So before it could be quite tricky to get licenses and things in games, but I think now business considerations are being made early doors in the development cycle for those because they know, you know, players and communities want it for authenticity. So I think it's kind of opened the door a little bit.
Well, you've touched on something there that I wanted to really pick up on, which is this idea of authenticity. And over the past couple of weeks, we've heard from people saying, oh, actually, gaming is just as good a medium for marketing as any other. But my question to you now then is it better in any way? What unreplicable strengths does gaming have as a marketing medium or to reach a community that no other medium can? Is it that interactivity with the streamer? Is it the fact that it's inherently social? Is it the fact that you are within kind of this space by choice? What would you say are some of the big strengths?
I guess, yeah, you can get real-time feedback, so you could see, you know, on a Twitch stream or whatever, actually what people think of an update or a skin or whatever, which could be, again, a good or a bad thing. Like, people might hate it and, you know, troll it, and it could be really bad. So I think maybe can't really think of any other examples where maybe you would have that. I think collectability and sort of creating those sort of feelings around it is a core component of gaming, and like community, you know, games live and die by their communities. So I think if you're building a campaign that focuses on community, you're probably not going to get communities that are as engaged, as vocal as you would within the games world. So I think if you approach it in the right way, you can probably get some really meaningful feedback or you know, pick up from a community that are, you know, by nature engaged because of what they're doing.
I suppose the flip side of that is that if you do it in an inauthentic way, the gaming communities will push back, and they'll push back very hard. We saw that with Team 17 recently with its push into NFTs. So MJ, how should brands who have no particular affiliation with the gaming space currently think about reaching out to those audiences?
I think that this is something where a lot of brands are kind of turning to, you know, partners that have been in the gaming space, because you really need to understand gaming. Gaming is the culture of gaming, like the memes, the lingo, like everything. It's such a kind of powerful thing, but if you're not kind of in it, if you don't get it, it might be completely like bewildering to you. So I think that the important thing is to get a partner who gets it. And, you know, we work a lot with gaming brands on TikTok, which is like the double whammy of like being double authentic, right? Because also TikTok really requires you to be super authentic. And the advice we always get is don't be don't be like the hello fellow kids kind of a brand. Like be open to the fact that gamers are a little bit of an audience that might want to like poke fun at you, or like, and they expect you to maybe make fun of yourself a little bit. Don't treat yourself too seriously. And I think that's a good way to kind of approach gamers, is just not be too serious, because this is a community that's built on like jokes and memes and like not taking things seriously. So I think that this is a good route for brands that have the flexibility to be a little bit more lighthearted about themselves, their products, you know, their community. But if you're kind of working with a brand or in a brand that's a little bit more traditional, then you need to really kind of think about how you do it. It's not impossible, you know. Luxury fashion is doing collaborations with gaming, but you really need to kind of think of an angle that's going to really, really work for like the brand that you're representing.
Of course, we've seen Gucci, Burberry, kind of that very high level interaction, you know, even getting the main characters of Final Fantasy to act as models, virtual models of their clothes. At the same time, we've seen Uniqlo, you know, partnering up with Capcom for a range of t-shirts, which are kind of at the more budget level. But who else do you think is doing interaction with the gaming audience really well from a brand space?
I think the Chipotle Roblox activation is probably one of the most successful, and I think probably on both sides. I think it's drawn a lot of attention to the platform, and I think the ROI is tangible for them, because you actually have to go and do something. And I think that's the thing quite often with in-game activations is, from, you know, in my experience and clients I've worked with, the ROI piece for the brand is it's not that tangible always. You know, if somebody sees something in a game, how do you know that they then go and interact with the brand? So I think that was a really cool way, and kind of, again, the buzzword, but sort of metaversey type activation where you could take sort of something in game and then go and actually do it in the real world. I think Burger King did something recently, which to MJ's point was sort of poking fun at like bugs and stuff in game, which I just think is a really clever way to, you know, hey, like we're a brand, but it's kind of picking on the things that people like to see and find funny, and there's endless YouTube videos and whatever about. So most recently, I think those are probably the two examples, and I think I think people are just going to get, you know, the education piece is getting there, so I think people are going to get more clever, do more stuff that actually works with the game, so we're just going to see bigger and better sort of advancements.
Nice, fantastic. And in fact, Burger King has a long history of doing that, because they obviously released Sneak King, where you played as the king and had to sort of sneak around. It was basically a playable meme.
Yeah.
At least that, God, years and years and years ago. But as we sort of come to the end of this discussion, what are you most excited about seeing in that intersection of marketing and gaming? Is it the ability to develop some metrics that, you know, really demonstrate the ROI? Is it, you know, the ability to reach gaming audiences through those adjacent sites like Twitch? What are you sort of most excited about, MJ, if we start with you?
I think it's the interactivity that I am most excited about, kind of humanizing brands and showing them from a different angle, but also kind of attaching brands to stuff that people really, really love and they're really, really passionate about. Because I think it's a very, very different thing to like have a brand cameo in a movie than to have like a brand experience within a game that's like really well done, well executed, kind of works within the space, has taken the needs of the community into kind of, you know, when working on it. And I think that's what we're going to see more, and that's what I'm really excited about, just seeing this kind of new ways of engaging with people in like a really just like lovely way, and just making those really nice connections between stuff that people just genuinely love so much and like the brands that they want to interact with.
Nice, fantastic. And Charlotte, we were talking before the panel about community. We're talking about the sort of the community around what is currently the kind of the FIFA, the kind of the FIFA brand, which is now moving away from EA. But to what extent then is that what you're most excited about, that community aspect?
I think just the education piece again with brands, realizing that you know you can be in a game, but actually also maybe look to the side at the community that supports that game. And there can be one of my clients is a company called Footwiz. They're the biggest community site for FIFA Ultimate Team. They have very loyal, you know, fan base. Turn up, look at their site every day, and there's opportunities there that would probably, you know, be far more effective than maybe going and trying to attempt to get into the walled garden that is FIFA as a game. And I think as the education piece increases, people will probably serve, you know, communities more and look at opportunities beyond just I want to be in that game, which I think is really cool as well, because it's, as I said earlier, it's sort of like having a campaign that is, yes, maybe game specific, but then filters down to the other pieces, and you know, that again, authenticity. I think those people are engaging there, so they feel a little bit more like it's maybe not being thrown in their face, and it's maybe something that they can, you know, can use. So I think that's exciting, and yeah, I think the sort of interactivity, but I think more events, because I think that's in the past those sort of events have always been things that have maybe existed in other medias, but the idea of having these sort of, you don't want to miss out on being in something that's really exclusive, and I think that's going to be really cool to have more of those in gaming that people can be part of.
Nice, fantastic. Well, MJ, if people want to sort of see your work within gaming, where can they go?
My website, which is, well, our website, yourstruly.uk, which is yrstruly.uk. And the most important thing about it is they have recently changed the cursor to be a crab, and then when you hover over images, it's a duck. Okay. So I think that for that reason alone, you should really go on that website.
Absolutely, yeah. Expect a flood of people coming in now. And Charlotte, where's the best place for people to find you?
Mine is not that exciting. LinkedIn, Charlotte Cook on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, Charlotte, MJ, thank you so much for coming and having this discussion. But for now, everybody who's been watching at home, thank you so much. If you do want to continue your exploration of everything to do with the intersection of marketing and gaming, please do visit thedrum.com. We've recently wrapped up our gaming deep dive, and there is a vast breadth of insight, of expertise from people, not just from The Drum, but from the people we've spoken to as well. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.